The courtroom was silent, but the tension was suffocating. The judge's wooden gavel lay poised in front of him, ready to drop at any moment, while the gallery was packed to the rafters with people who were jostling to witness history being made. At the center of it all were Kody Brown and Robyn Brown, their faces tight, their shoulders stiff, their carefully constructed world teetering on the edge of collapse. Over the years, Kody had painted himself as the misunderstood patriarch, a man riven between duty, sacrifice, and the crushing weight of keeping his plural family intact. Robyn, ever the emotional shadow beside him, held tight to his narrative, depicting herself as the loyal, tearful wife who only desired peace. But behind the smiles, the confessions, and the carefully edited TLC scenes, something was brewing in secret. Something to the tune of $500,000. Christine and Janelle had long suspected that something was wrong. Money that should have been available for their children's needs, for homes, for doctor bills, was suddenly gone. And when questions were asked, Kody would brush them off, explaining that bills, taxes, or bad investments were absorbing family money. And they believed him for years, or maybe they just wanted to. But then the truth came out. A paper trail, hidden accounts, unexplained transfers, and in a flash the facade widened like a crack. The $500,000 secret wasn't figures on paper. It was betrayal and manipulation and the smoking gun that had brought Cody and Robyn to this very courtroom. The prosecutor rose from her seat, a thick file in her hand. She walked to the jury box, her heels clicking on the floor like thunder. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice cutting through the air, "this is not about money. This is about trust, lies, and the knowing manipulation of a family for personal gain." The evidence we're going to show proves, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that Robyn and Kody Brown siphoned off $500,000 into secret accounts, while denying their wives and children the assistance they so desperately needed. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Christine sat upright, her fists twisted together in her lap, her chin raised. Janelle nodded fractionally beside her, her jaw set in quiet resolve. Across the aisle, Kody clenched his fists, his face pinking, and Robyn buried her face in a tissue, her sobs muted. The prosecutor displayed a photo on the screen, a bank transfer receipt, bold figures, yellow highlighted. $75,000 deposited into an account under Robyn's name. The date? The same week Christine had begged Kody for help with Isabel's surgery costs. The jury leaned forward, pens writing feverishly. The judge's eyes narrowed, scanning Kody and Robyn as if measuring their very souls. And again the prosecutor spoke, her voice slicing like a knife. "This is only the beginning." The prosecutor's voice echoed around the room, and everyone in the room knew that they were not hearing about some other courtroom battle. This was the destruction of a dynasty built on deceit. Kody braced himself in his seat, his jaw clenched so hard that a vein throbbed in his temple. Robyn pressed against him, her lips moving with desperate whispers, and he shoved her away with a violent movement. For once, there were no cameras to protect their reputation, no TLC producers to cut away the bloody bits. Christine's gaze didn't waver from the screen, her fingers crossed so tightly that they white-knuckled. Janelle was rigid, her expression unreadable, but the silence between them screaming. They weren't showing up here as catty ex-wives. They were showing up here as witnesses, as victims, and as women standing up for a long-overdue truth against decades of lies. The prosecutor pushed the remote for a third time, and another paper lit up the screen. "This," she pointed with her finger, highlighting the red circle around the transfer, "was a simple withdrawal from the joint family account, money set aside for community expenses. What did it get deposited into instead? An organization named CBR Holdings. Ring a bell?" She gazed about at the jury, Heary's appearing to rake over them. "It should. CBR stands for Cody and Robyn Brown." A murmur of grumblings ran through the gallery. The jurors shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. Cody's lawyer leapt up. "Objection. That's prejudicial." The judge cut him down. "Overruled. Continue." The prosecutor's gaze locked on Kody. "Mr. Brown, do you dispute that this corporation exists?" Kody faltered, his mouth opening and no sound coming out. Kody's silence had endured longer than anyone had thought. His gaze darted Toas' lawyer to Robyn, who wiped at her eyes with a crumpled tissue. The courtroom waited in suspense for him to say anything at all. Kody spoke, his voice low and gravelly. "I don't remember." The prosecutor interrupted him before he could go on. "You don't recall creating an LLC in your name and in your legal wife's name? You don't recall investing hundreds of thousands of dollars in it and having the other wives told the family was broke?" The room burst with whispers. Christine's mouth curved up into a tiny smile, not of joy, but of vindication. Janelle simply closed her eyes for a moment, as if savoring the weight of finally being listened to after all those years of gaslighting. The prosecutor did not relent. "Let me remind you, Mr. Brown." She clicked Thermote, and on the projector appeared a scan of official paperwork, a stampede and signed LLC filing. In bold letters across the top, the names Kody W. Brown and Robyn A. Brown appeared as co-owners. Robyn gasped under her breath. Kody thumped his fist on the table. "This is out of context." That company was established for the judge's gavel crashed down. "Mr. Brown, you will remain calm. Another outburst and I'll have you removed." The oppressive silence that followed. The prosecutor moved closer to the jury, her voice gentle, measured. "Ladies and gentlemen, this was no accident. This was no miscommunication. This was a calculated move to split funds, family funds, and put them into a private egg nest controlled by Cody and Robyn Brown only. While Christine was grappling with the cost of her daughter's surgery. While Janelle was told she couldn't possibly build her home on Coyote Pass. While Meri hung in financial limbo. Christine's eyes welled with tears as she stared directly ahead, the words hitting her like a confirmation she'd waited years to hear. Janelle's jaw locked, her gaze fixed on Kody, unwavering, unshaken. The prosecutor let the silence hang for a moment before her next line. "And this is only the tip of the iceberg. The $500,000 we've uncovered is just the start. The real question, Mr. Brown, is how much more is hidden. And who else knew?" The gallery gasped again, heads jerking toward Robyn. She hid her face in her hands, shoulders trembling. Kody shook his head wildly, muttering something under his breath. But the jury had seen enough already, a man unraveling at the seams under the burden of his own secrets. And just as the tension was on the verge of snapping, the prosecutor said the words Kody's silence was stifling. He had opened his mouth, was going to say something, and then closed it again, a restraining hand from his lawyer on his arm. The jury was not fooled. They could see the tension, the flushing of his face with every second that passed. Finally, Kody leaned into the microphone and spoke in a low, defensive tone. I opened the account for business purposes, for the family's future. It wasn't like that." The prosecutor's eyebrow jumped high, her tone cutting as thinly sliced glass. "Business purposes? Mr. Brown, could you tell me why these business purposes included a $38,000 purchase at a high-end jeweler? Or $12,000 in designer clothing charges that align with receipts in Robyn Brown's own closet?" Gasps echoed in the gallery. Christine's mouth was a thin line, and Janelle covered her eyes in horror. Robyn's eyes welled up with tears, and she dabbed at them with a tissue, but the motion was practiced, insincere. The prosecutor pressed on. "And what about the $65,000 down payment on a vehicle? A vehicle, I might add, that was never registered in the name of the family company or in a shared account, but in Robyn Brown's name only." She turned to the jury. "Sounds like business to you?" Kody fumbled, his frantic voice rising. "You don't get it. It was for the family. It was all for the family." But the prosecutor's words sliced through his excuse like a blade. "No, Mr. Brown, it was for your family. You and Robyn. Not for Christine. Not for Janelle. Not for Meri. And certainly not for the kids who were promised there wasn't any money left for their futures." The silence that followed was heavy. Kody sat back in his chair, his face pale now, and Robyn stared down at the desk in front of her, not daring to look up at the jury. The judge cleared his throat, the sound echoing ominously in the room. "We will take a short recess before continuing," Christine gasped, her eyes welling up. Janelle leaned in close and whispered, something she alone could not hear, but the look on Christine's face told it all. It wasn't relief. It was vindication, but still, everyone knew. The biggest revelation hadn't even been revealed yet. When recess was over at last and courtroom doors swung open once more, the air was thick with tension. The gallery buzzed with low murmurs, a current of electricity running through the room. Everyone looked on as Cody and Robyn walked back in, heads held high but postures betraying them. Cody's hands were fists, tightly coiled into tight balls, knuckles white as ivory. Robyn clutched her tissue as if it were her only lifeline. The act had started again, but this time there were fewer of the faithful. The bailiff's shout pierced. "All rise!" They all stood as the judge returned, his black robe flowing like a ghost across the floor. He wasted no time. "Be seated," he snapped, his voice cold. The jury shifted back into position, some attempting to avoid Cody's glare, others looking at him with naked distaste. The prosecutor rose quietly, a fistful of papers in her hand. She didn't look at Cody or at Robyn. She spoke to the jury, though. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you've heard so far is revolting. But what you are about to witness takes this case from accounting fraud to outright manipulation. I present to you Exhibit 52, email communications between Kody Brown and a financial advisor with direct ties to CBR Holdings." With a click, the projector came to life. The words in bold black letters glared across the screen, and the room was instantly hushed as the email subject line flashed across the room. "How to protect assets from Christine." There was a silent gasp that passed through the room. Christine froze, her hand flying to her mouth. Janelle's expression turned cold, her eyes flashing anger. Robyn's tears were beginning to flow once again, but this time they were a mixture of terror and not sorrow. The prosecutor began reading aloud. Date March 17, 2021, from Kody Brown to Mark T. Ellis, financial advisor. Quote, "Christine is becoming unstable. If she leaves, I want her cut off for good. I need to know how to hide money so that she's no claim. Move $250,000 from the Family Traditions account into CBR Holdings immediately. Once she's gone forever." The words hit the courtroom like a thunderclap. Christine moved her head slowly back and forth, muttering to herself, "He actually did that. He really did that." Cody jumped out of his seat, yelling, "That's taken out of context." I was angry. "It was a rough draft email." The judge slammed down his gavel, his voice heard over Cody's yelling. "Mr. Brown, sit down. This is your last warning." Reluctantly, Cody shifted in his chair, his face flushed and sweating. His lawyer whispered frantically in his ear, but Cody pushed him away, glaring at the jury. The prosecutor leaned over the table. "Out of context, Mr. Brown? Perhaps. Let's see the follow-up response." She clicked once more, and another email was on the screen. This time, it was the advisor's response. "Got it. Suggest opening more holding accounts in Robyn's name. Money can be transferred over time to go unnoticed. Enclosed is a plan for siphoning." The gallery erupted again. Reporters scribbled madly. Janelle covered her face with her hands, shook her head in disbelief that she'd wasted years defending him. Christine simply sat, the tears dried on her face now, as she set her face to something much more resilient. Resolve. The prosecutor let the silence linger before driving the point home. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is not the behavior of a man protecting his family. This is the behavior of a man plotting to wipe part of his family out of existence, financially, emotionally, and legally." The weight of her words hung in the air like a cloud of smoke. The jury looked at Cody, disgust on their faces. Robyn shook, reached out to touch his arm, but Cody recoiled, his pride too fragile to support comfort. And just when all thought the worst had been seen, the prosecutor spoke to the judge. "Your Honor, if it please the court, I would like to introduce the next group of documents, private text messages which were subpoenaed. that show Kody's true feelings for Christine and Janelle during this very same period. The judge nodded curtly. Go on? Christine braced herself, Janelle's hand gliding over hers for reassurance. This storm was far from over. The next surprise was going to strike deeper than money. It would expose Kody's heart, or lack of one. The lights dimmed briefly as the prosecutor clicked to the next slide. A fresh surge of tension coursed through the courtroom, and even the jurors leaned forward in their seats. On the screen, a series of text messages flashed, the green and gray bubbles against the white background. These, the prosecutor continued, her tone calm and detached, are private messages between Robyn Brown and Kody Brown, April to June of 2021, the exact same period that Christine was complaining about money, and Janelle was complaining about what the future held for the family. Let's hear what Mr. Brown had to say in his own words. The initial message appeared on the screen. Christine is weak. Always playing the victim. Doesn't deserve a single penny more after what she's done. A gasp ran through the gallery. Christine was sitting straight in front, her face pale but her body unflinching. The second message appeared. Janelle thinks she's so clever, but she's another liability. If she goes too aggressively, I'll cut her out as well. We have to protect what's ours. Janelle's mouth clenched, fingers grasping the table edge until her knuckles turned white. She didn't budge, but her silence spoke louder than words ever could. The prosecutor spoke to the jury once more. Does that sound like a man trying to unite his family? Or does it sound like a man scheming with his fourth wife to tear it apart from the inside? Robyn dabbed at the corners of her eyes, trying to appear weepy, but the projection of her answers betrayed her. One bubble pulsed on screen, her message clear. I agree. Christine and Janelle will only bring us down. You and a need to look to the future, not the past. If that's what it's going to cost in terms of leaving them behind, then so be it. The reaction was immediate. Murmurs erupted, heads were shaken in distaste, and glances passed between the jurors and Robyn and Kody. The illusions of Robyn as the innocent victim were shattered in mere seconds. The prosecutor's voice cut through the noise like a blade. This was not neglect. This was not mismanagement. This was a willful, premeditated betrayal. A conspiracy between Robyn and Kody to steal money for themselves and systematically killing off the wives who gave up everything to build this family's empire. Kody's lawyer sprang to his feet. Objection! These are personal domestic communications, out of context. They were emotional and not strategic. The judge came forward, his eyes firm. Objection overruled. The court finds these messages squarely relevant to motive and intent. Continue. Kody slammed his fist on the table, his fury trembling his voice. This is a witch hunt. You're twisting everything I've said. Christine, Janelle, you know I took care of you. I gave you everything. Christine slowly turned around, her voice even and cold. No, Kody, you took everything. The gallery burst again, but it wasn't gasps this time. It was applause. The gavel came down from the judge, calling for order. But the point had already hit home. The jury had heard enough to know Kody for what he really was. The prosecutor flicked one final slide, and the words in bold red script. The $500K is safe. They'll never find it. The courtroom was quiet. Kody stood frozen, his color gone. Robyn buried her face in her hands. The prosecutor didn't need to go on. The message hit home louder than any argument ever could have. Everyone in the courtroom knew one thing. If this was halfway through the trial, the worst of it was yet to come out. The judge's gavel rang out for the second time as the gallery finally subsided, though the air in the courtroom remained tense. Kody slumped back in his chair. His shoulders knotted with rage as Robyn shook by his side, clutching the tissue in her hand as if to shield herself from the wave of truth that was sweeping over her. The prosecutor adjusted her glasses, lifted another file from her stack, and walked toward the center of the courtroom. We've seen the emails. We've seen the text messages. Now let's talk about where the money went. Exhibit 61, please. With the touch of a button, the projector lit up again. It wasn't words this time, however. It was numbers. Bank statements flashed on, each line underlined in yellow. These, the prosecutor informed them, are official statements from two accounts: CBR Holdings, which we already know belongs to Cody and Robyn, and a second shell account hidden behind Flagstaff Family Trust. The room stirred. Christine leaned forward, her eyes scanning the figures, while Janelle crossed her arms, her expression hard and unreadable. The prosecutor pointed with her pen. Notice this transfer. $500,000 moved from the Communal Family Traditions LLC account into Flagstaff Family Trust, then immediately funneled into CBR Holdings. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the $500K we've been discussing, money that Christine and Janelle were told simply didn't exist. She moved to the next slide, where receipts bordered the numbers. A tacky array of expenditure covered the screen: custom jewels, designer handbags, exclusive holidays, even a designer invoice for redoing Robyn's house that totaled over $80,000. The prosecutor's tone became increasingly combative. While Christine was struggling to pay for her relocation to Utah, while Janelle was told she couldn't even afford to construct a home on property she contributed, Cody and Robyn were dining in style and renovating their mansion. And when asked, they told the other wives there was nothing left, that the family was broke. Do you see the pattern? The faces of the jurors told it all: shock, horror, and indignation. One shook her head slowly, another scribbled wildly in his notebook. Cody leaned forward in his chair, his voice a low, menacing snarl. It wasn't like that. You don't understand. I had to protect Robyn and the kids. I had to make sure— Protect them? The prosecutor broke in, her tone cutting. At the expense of your other wives? At the expense of your other children? That isn't protection, Mr. Brown. That's stealing. Christine's eyes brimmed with tears, but her lips curled up into the smallest, most stubborn smile. Janelle glared at her, then at Cody, her face chiseled from steel. The judge leaned forward, his tone low and measured. Mr. Brown, another outburst and I will find you in contempt of court. Do I make myself clear? Cody gritted hard, his jaw working as he slumped back once more, his fists shaking at his sides. The prosecutor turned once more to the jury, her words heavy with meaning. This isn't about one mistake or one bad investment. This is a trail of deception that spans years, a pattern of moving money, hiding funds, and rewriting history to favor one wife above all others. And tonight, we're not just exposing theft, we're exposing the deliberate dismantling of an entire family. The ensuing silence was stifling. Everyone was aware that something more was coming, for if $500,000 had been hidden, the question actually was what else lay buried beneath Cody and Robyn's empire of deceit. The atmosphere inside the courtroom was charged. Everyone's attention continued to be fixed on the prosecutor as she laid down the bank statements and reached for a fresh folder from the stack. Her tone lowered, sharp and commanding, as though she had a sense that the following move would reverse everything. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, she went on, we've traced the paper trail. But to understand how this $500,000 secret worked in real life, we have to hear from someone who saw it happen in front of their eyes. The prosecution calls Mindy Jessup to the stand. The gallery gasped. Robyn's head swung around to Cody, her eyes bulging with desperation. Christine sucked a sharp breath, while Janelle's lips pressed into a thin, smug line. Mindy Jessup, Robyn's niece and one-time nanny to the defendants, moved slowly toward the witness stand. Her back was straight, but her expression unyielding as she wore a plain gray suit. She was sworn in, then sat down, not glancing at Cody or Robyn. The prosecutor moved up to her calmly but confidently. Ms. Jessup, would you explain the court your relationship with the defendants? Her aunt, replied Mindy quietly, glancing at Robyn for a moment. And I was employed by them as a nanny. And while you were with them, the prosecutor continued, did you see or have access to any financial documents of Cody and Robyn Brown? Mindy shook her head slowly. Yes, they weren't discreet. Mail, statements, even bank notices. Sometimes they'd just leave them lying around the house. I saw things. The prosecutor held up a copy of a statement that had already been entered as evidence. Do you know this? Yes, Mindy answered seriously. That's from the Flagstaff Family Trust account. I remember it being on Kody's desk. I remember because the balance surprised me. Over $500,000. And I remember Robyn calling it our safety net. The jury leaned forward as whispers erupted in the courtroom. The prosecutor's voice turned bitter. Did you ever hear them talking about this money, what it was for? Mindy took a deep breath. Yes, many times. They told me it was to protect themselves. That Christine and Janelle didn't need to know because they had their own lives. Kody had told me once, when Christine finally walks, she's walking with nothing. And Robyn agreed. The words were like a blow to Christine, her body stiffening as she brushed away a tear. Janelle's eyes closed, her expression one of anger and sadness. Kody slammed his fist on the table, his voice rising. She's not telling the truth. She always did hate us. The judge rapped with the gavel. Mr. Brown, another interruption and you will be expelled from the courtroom. Mindy flinched at the tone of Kody's voice, but stood her ground. I am not lying, she said softly. I did care about those kids. I stayed because I thought maybe I could protect them. But when I discovered how they were hiding money while Christine was struggling to make ends meet, while Janelle was living in an RV, I knew it was wrong. They called it their nest egg, but it wasn't theirs. It was theirs. The prosecutor stepped back, letting the words sink into the quiet. The jurors' faces hardened, their pencils scribbling across notepads. Kody's mask fell away completely for the first time. His face twisted with rage, his jaw set, sweat forming on his forehead. Robyn's tears streamed down, but no one believed they were a victim's tears anymore. The $500K wasn't cash anymore. It was proof. Proof of deception, proof of intent, proof that the illusion Kody and Robyn had put on all these years was pretend. But everyone knew Mindy hadn't been telling everything. That there was something more she had left unspoken. The truth that could destroy Kody and Robyn beyond repair. The courtroom was silent following Mindy's testimony. Kody glared at her like a trapped animal, but she did not blink this time. The prosecutor let the tension build before making another move. Miss Jessup, you employed the term nest egg. Would you care to explain? Mindy swallowed hard and agreed. Yes, Robyn used the $500,000 as their nest egg. She said it was money to make their future secure. But she did say something else. The prosecutor leaned forward. And what was that? Mindy's eyes briefly darted to Robyn before settling on the jury. She said, as long as we keep this on the down low, the others will never have control. This ensures it's just you and me, Kody? A collective gasp filled the courtroom. Christine covered her mouth with her hand, shaking her head in disbelief, while Janelle muttered under her breath, Unbelievable! The jurors' pens flew across their notebooks. The prosecutor's voice was a hammer. So not only did they hide the money, they used it as leverage. To isolate, to control, to destroy the other wives from their fair share of the family assets. Kody yelled, his voice ringing out, That's not true! She doesn't know what she's saying. His lawyer tugged desperately at his arm, hissing for him to shut up. But Kody was beyond reason. Christine confronted him for the first time that day, shaking but firm voice. You always taught us that we were a family, Kody. You always preached sacrifice and loyalty. But the truth is, you only ever asked for loyalty to you, and you sacrificed us for her. The room was cold stillness. Even Robyn, who had been dabbing at her eyes with tissues, froze mid-motion, pinned under the power of Christine's words. The prosecutor seized the moment. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not just a story of financial dishonesty. This is a story of betrayal. Of two people who conspired not only to steal money, but to steal dignity, security, and trust from their family. And the evidence, emails, bank statements, text messages, and now witness testimony, persuades us all. The judge rested forward, his voice grave. We will continue with closing arguments tomorrow. Court is adjourned. The gavel crashed, and yet still no one moved. Kody fumed with rage, shaking. Robyn covered her face with her hands. And Christine and Janelle, though obviously shaken, exchanged a moment of wordless solidarity. The $500,000 secret was out. But everyone in that room knew in their hearts, Theatrial's ultimate determination could change everything forever. And if there were rumors of one final piece of hidden evidence going around, Cody and Robyn's empire wasn't just cracking, but on the point of complete collapse. The next day, the courtroom was packed to capacity. Word of Mindy's testimony had spread like wildfire, and reporters packed every available corner, cameras flashing when Cody and Robyn entered, their faces pale and gaunt. Christine and Janelle, however, walked in with quiet dignity, their resolve stronger than ever. The judge called the session to order. "Before closing arguments, there is a last issue the court must decide," he announced gruffly, his tone with a seriousness that made the room burst with anticipation. The prosecutor stood, holding a slender folder. "Your Honor, the prosecution has own final piece of evidence. It was submitted late last night by subpoena, and it settles the issue of the defendant's intent." The judge gestured. "Proceed." The screen lit up with a scanned document, handwritten, unmistakably Cody's. Across the top in bold letters were the words, "Exit strategy." The prosecutor's voice was stern as she read from the document. "This letter, which was taken from Kody Brown's personal papers, is a plan to leave the other wives behind entirely. It calls for moving assets over to the name of Robyn, the sale of communal property, and leaving Christine and Janelle with nothing." Cody, in his own words, penned, "Once the others are gone, it's finally just us. No more sharing. No more lies." The jury gasped, and the courtroom was filled with shocked murmurs. Tears filled Christine's eyes, but she sat upright, her strength radiating. Janelle crossed her fists, her lips pursed into a tight line, but there was a glint in her vindictive eyes. Cody's swift face reddened. "That's not what it meant! That's not what it meant!" he shouted, his voice cracking. Robyn sobbed audibly, her head shaking, but the jurors were no longer moved by sympathy. Their faces were determined, set, and disgusted. The judge pounded his gavel wildly. "Order! Order in this courtroom!" Their reverberations seemed like thunder, and then the judge leaned forward, his face as sharp as a knife. "Mr. Brown, Mrs. Brown, the evidence against you is overwhelming. This court will adjourn to a verdict shortly. But let me make one thing clear. Your secrets are no longer secure. Your house of deceit has fallen, and justice is knocking on the door." The gavel came down again, this time even louder. "Court is recessed until tomorrow." The room erupted into chaos, reporters shouting, witnesses humming. But allies were on Cody and Robyn. Their faces told the tale, terror. The fear of having nowhere left to run, spin, hide. Christine and Janelle walked out together, hand in hand. For the first time in years, they were no longer living under Cody's control. They were free from it. And yet, the crowd outside still murmured. Rumors circulated that the 500K scandal wasn't complete, that there was another account somewhere deeper still, worth even more than anybody had theorized. If that final piece of evidence leaked out, it wouldn't just destroy Cody and Robyn's reputation, it might destroy all they had left. The story wasn't over. It was only starting,